In 3, 2, 1. Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Agents of Recovery podcast. So good to have you all here today. I'd like to thank you all for downloading, sharing, and subscribing to the podcast. Thank you all for reaching out. So many of you guys are taking a little bit of time to ask for help, reaching out, and that's what we're here for. So continue to do so. You can find all of our social media links through the Facebook page and so on. I want to thank you all for doing all that you're doing out there, navigating this life of sobriety, overcoming the trauma of life, and really putting into check some of that mental health, some of that naysayer stuff you have in the back of your head. That's what the Agents of Recovery is here for, to help you suppress all that stuff, to work it out, to change it into something powerful. Hey, welcome to the podcast, Brock Bevel. How you doing down there, brother?
Dude, cold.
Cold.
Max and I woke up to some cold temperature, unlike you guys in Utah, man.
Brilliant. And Max Hall, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I'm with Brock. I woke up, there's frost on the car. I feel like my doors are ice shut. Got to warm the car up. And I'm thinking, good for me getting up in the cold. Then Blue sends us a picture of a winter wonderland up in Utah. I said,
oh my gosh,
I'm glad I'm in Arizona. You know, it's 40 degrees here, but it looks like it's probably 5 degrees where you're at, Blue.
Move over. I'm coming. Dude, we woke up with about 7.5 inches of snow today, which is, I'm done.
I do not miss that.
Stop threatening us, because you keep saying you're coming, you never show up.
Dude, as soon as the ground thaws, the for sale sign's in the ground. Hey guys, no, but we have some serious stuff to be talking about today, and it's one that comes with I guess the sting of being fairly new in the media right now. Even though the situation's about 2 years old now, the verdict of the Tyler Skaggs trial just wrapped up last week, and I've been kind of had my I don't know, my thoughts kind of revolving around just the sadness of what this meant and everything that it kind of I guess what it means to the world of Major League Baseball, the athletics in general, public at large, and just right down into our own homes. It's the situations that so many people right now are facing, which is losing loved ones to not just the opiate epidemic, but to that ugly devil drug fentanyl. Max and Brock, I want to share with you and the listeners a news clip, just kind of describing a little bit about what the situation is. We're going to talk about some of the residual effects, maybe some of the things that we've noticed, and let's share with the listeners a little bit of our mindset.
A Tarrant County jury found a former Los Angeles Angels employee guilty of giving pitcher Tyler Skaggs the drugs that led to his overdose death in Southlake. Eric K. now faces life in prison for the 2 serious drug charges he was convicted for. Fox 4's Leanne Wynn, live outside the courthouse tonight in Tarrant County with what was a pretty quick decision by jurors. Leanne.
Yeah, see, the jury came back with a verdict in about 3 hours. Kay did not have any visible reaction in the courtroom and was immediately taken into custody.
It's a tragedy. There's no winners in any of this.
Former Angels Communications Director Eric Kay found guilty on both counts of conspiring to possess with intent to distribute a controlled substance and distribution of that controlled substance, fentanyl, causing Tyler Skaggs' death.
This is a tragedy all the way around. You know, Eric K. is getting ready to do minimum 20 years in federal penitentiary, and it goes up from there. And Tyler Skaggs is gone.
In closing arguments Thursday, U.S. attorneys said Eric K. was Tyler Skaggs' drug dealer and called K. a pill pusher, the one person Skaggs texted that night and invited to his hotel room. U.S. attorneys said Kay looked at other places like OfferUp for drugs and had customers. During the trial, jurors heard from 5 former Angels players that testified they got oxycodone from Kay. U.S. attorneys said he intentionally distributed the drugs to Skaggs, knowing they could contain fentanyl. Arguing in court, it was the defendant. It was Eric K. The evidence doesn't leave room for any other option. There's no evidence of any other sources. But the defense accused U.S. attorneys of misrepresenting evidence and argued there could have been other drug suppliers outside of K, pointing at others Kay was communicating with about drugs and referring to testimony from Skaggs' drug dealer in California. Defense attorneys also argued Skaggs could have been given the pills somewhere else, in the clubhouse, at the airport, or on the plane. Attorneys for Kay also telling the jury, Mr. Skaggs didn't deserve what happened to him, but it doesn't mean you aren't responsible for your own actions. Ultimately, in a case that brought widespread attention to painkiller abuse among MLB players, that argument was not enough to convince the jury.
We're obviously disappointed in the verdict. We thought there were many reasons to doubt the government's case.
While Kay himself had no visible reaction in court, Skaggs' family hugged after the verdict. Kay was then immediately ordered into custody of the U.S. Marshals as his family looked on.
So, listeners, that's a very brief, report on the culmination of 2 years of investigation, and there are, Brock, in my eyes, there are no winners in this at all. Let's start with you, brother. As you hear that, as you follow the case a little bit, I'm curious because you've seen it from the other side. You understand trying to get the bad guys off the streets, but I want your thoughts on this, and then Max, you're up after Brock, brother.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? This is a big case. This is not what we're seeing. We think about a drug dealer, how they titled this Eric K as a drug dealer, drug pusher. I don't want to say there's a right and wrong in this, but there's a lot of victims. There's a lot of victims involved. There's 5 other players who were also involved using with K. If you look into this deeper, Kay, who was the former communications director for the Angels, was also involved and used with them. So here we are, a bunch of individuals addicted to drugs, addicted to fentanyl. And the difference between what we're seeing where these young men and women, these juveniles dying, is these are adults. Each one of them knowing right from wrong, each one of them knowing the risks that they're taking. Now, I'm not saying anybody in this is right or anybody is wrong, but I see some major issues. Number one, the Skaggs, when he died, he was alone.
Yeah.
And the way the medical examiner said he died was by choking on his vomit. So of course he's laying on his bed. He's back. He tries to throw up, purge. He's so intoxicated that he can't roll over. He can't purge it out of his mouth, and he ends up suffocating, choking on his own vomit. And he also had other drugs in his system. He had alcohol in his system. And it's like, okay, I understand that Mr. K has a lot of liability by being the supplier, being the middleman, the dealer. But how was this dude left alone for so long? Where was his people? Where were his team at? How did he get so intoxicated a night before a game where nobody saw this going on? So, there's a lot I wanted to dissect in it, but those are kind of my just surface thoughts right away.
Yeah, I'm taking note. We're gonna swing around back to that. Max, you've lived in the life of having that kind of limelight too. It's a hard thing, I would imagine, because it can plague anybody, dude. It could have taken any of your teammates, even you, to a certain degree. So you might have some unique perspective into kind of that situation.
Yeah, I can relate as somebody who took pills. After my first season, or kind of after my concussions or shoulder surgery and all that, even the next year going with the Cardinals, I was taking pills all the time. And there were other dudes around doing it and all that. So I kind of get the culture of it. And what's funny is when you're in the culture of it, you don't think big picture. You don't think of the what ifs. Everything's good. You think you're buddies. You love each other. Hey, let's get this. Let's do it. Let's hug it up. We're bros. You know what I'm saying? There's like this culture that goes with it. And you're not really looking out for the best interest of your buddy. You guys are kind of in this together. So the way I see it is apparently Eric goes over to his hotel room. They got evidence of that, of him getting invited over and going over there. What I think happened is the dude hung out for a little bit, probably gave him some drugs, maybe did it together, and then he took off to go back to the room and left him there. That's what I assume happened. Is that, okay, we did it, we buddied up, boom, boom, okay, good night. And maybe he did more after that, once he left, right? And so, does Eric K need to be held accountable? Yes, absolutely he does, okay? But we also have to understand he was an addict too. and he's doing this probably to flip it and get the money to be able to supply his own habit, right? That's how it works. So, yes, it's his fault, but at the same time, man, I mean, Skaggs was getting it, and he was using it with people and without people on his own, just like I did. Okay, and they thought they had this little group and they were going to protect each other until someone dies, right? And then the whole thing gets exploded, and even the guys that were using got to be looking at themselves like, man, what were we doing? Because they were feeling it just as much as anybody.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? Like the whole little culture of it,
For sure.
They just fueled each other. And it could have been any one of those dudes who died. Just happened to be Skaggs, unfortunately for him. So, the way I look at it, just like what Brock said, there's plenty of fault to go around. Okay, but at the same time, like, the dude was in it and was doing it on his own and suffered the consequences. So there's accountability on both sides. Man, that is I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, but I think that's a pretty brutal sentence. You know what I mean? 20 years, and I don't know the extent of how he was dealing or how much he was dealing. Was he just getting enough to have and kind of give to some of his buddies, or was he a big-time dealer? Was he getting big-time stuff in and distributing this all around? So, I mean, I don't know all the details of it. A sad situation that I can relate to, having been in a similar situation of sports and playing and taking this stuff. And I assume not only for physical pain, but at the point of being addicted to where we're doing this, we're out on the road, we're partying, and I also need it to be able to function and play, which is a sad spot to be in that I totally understand, though, Blue, having done it myself.
For sure. Well, that's the motivator too, right? I mean, it would be the same if it was someone, let's say, like in a mainstream job, if it's a computer programmer or a plumber. If you can't function, if you're injured, if you're hurt, if you're aching, whatever, and plus you got a addiction on top, you're going to do whatever means necessary to get that job done because you don't want to lose your job. Now, granted, you could always put a plumbing job off or shift it to somebody else, but you know what? When you're the starting pitcher for the Angels, you don't get that luxury. You have to go to work, and if you don't pitch, if you don't work, you're getting bumped down. I mean, it's a hard thing. So I look at it through the lenses like this, and I love what Brock just said too about they left him alone. It's like, how involved is everyone? I was talking to Randy Grimes last Thursday on a panel we were doing, and he was talking about how, didn't anyone else notice that I was like last to show up, that I would slur my speech, that all this kind of stuff? Did anybody notice? And he says, yeah, they did notice, but no one wanted to be the one that called me out. No one wanted to be the one that kind of stuck their head out, because half of my teammates were having struggles too. And so it's like, this is a bigger deal that I think a lot of people are letting on. I think the unfortunate part too is that I'm not sure, and that's the first time I've heard that Eric might have realized that there was fentanyl in there. Tyler did respond and say, hey, are these legit? And it was like, I think so, pretty sure. It wasn't like a definite. But when you're in that situation, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm offended that there's fentanyl in my pill. It doesn't matter. We all think at that point in time that we're 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and it's not going to happen to us. Yeah. So that's the unfortunate thing too, and it's right. I think that the whole situation is so sad. But does 20 years do it justice? Because I'm sorry, Tyler has a huge responsibility in this too, and it sucks. But this is one of those situations where there's not going to be a happy ending or a positive outcome on any side of this. So I'm with you guys both. But let's talk a little bit about that, Brock. Being left alone in more ways than just one. Does that make sense? Like, there's got to be people that noticed that didn't say anything. And I know that sucks. And is it our job? Whose responsibility is it? Am I my brother's keeper? In this day and age, I think we kind of have to be, wouldn't you say?
Well, what's interesting, I'm referring to a report by CNN, was one of the articles that I read, and I'm going to quote this. It said, the trial showed Eric K's drug traffic was known to numerous people within the Angels organization, and it resulted in the tragic death and unnecessary of one of their most popular players. We have no doubt that the Angels knew what Eric K was doing, and the team is morally and legally responsible for his conduct. He said, alluding to the family's lawsuit against the organization, K and other team officials. Now, okay, I get all that, right? But here's the question, and Max, maybe you can even help us out, because when we're talking professional sports here, the Angels organization was aware of his drug use. Okay, it said that they were aware of it. They knew about it. They knew that both of them were involved, and that other players, 5 other players, had been affected or touched one way or the other by these drugs, and by Eric. The question I have is, if they knew about his drug use, what were they doing about it? Of course, we don't get to see the medical because of HIPAA protection. We don't get to see what they were doing, but what involvement? If you know you have a player struggling, what checks and balances do we have in place to help them? So, Max, when they were issuing you medication for your injury, was there any checks and balances? Did anybody follow up? Was there any check-ins or any of that when we're talking about professional sports?
No. Here's the brutal reality of it, and some people may agree or disagree with this. They don't give a shit. If you can perform, get out there and perform. If you can't, we'll cut you and next guy up. And the mentality in that world is, you're a grown-ass man. You got to handle your own stuff. You know what I mean? And so I could see a lot of people in the organization or other players being like, dude, he's a big boy. He can make his own decisions. If that's what he wants to do, then that's what he's going to do. But he's got to perform on game day, as long as he can do that. Now, if it starts affecting performance and the coaches notice that, I could see them bringing them in and sitting them down, whatever. How you not notice that is unbelievable to me. Because I know when I was doing it, I was hazy, I was falling asleep in meetings, I was forgetting stuff at practice, wasn't practicing well, I was losing weight. I just, there were noticeable signs. And not one person, not one player, person, anybody in the organization ever pulled me aside or asked if I was doing okay. Or where you at? Hey, I'm noticing some stuff. You okay? Just not how that world works.
Yeah.
And so every man for himself is pretty much what it is, and you're responsible for your own actions. This is the professional sports life is a fast life. It's a glamorous life. You know what I mean? There's parties, there's women, there's all kinds of stuff going on, and you got to be able to handle yourself. And if you can't, then they just, you're not meant for this life. You're not meant for this culture that we're in. And so there's no checking up on anybody. There's no doing any of that. I hope that changes, and I hope it's different, because I'm talking my experience 10 years ago, and it could be different now. But after hearing this in the last few years, it sounds like it's not. It's something that people will brush under the rug and kind of almost baby the situation because of what he does on the field, right? And he was a heck of a player. He was a heck of a player. And so people are willing to turn a blind eye to a really good player because they want to keep him happy and keep him going and see the results on the field. So, man, there's no checking in. Something like that happens. It's sad, and I hope this changes perspective and changes protocol for teams. But I think that it is what it is. And again, I'm just so happy that this fentanyl stuff wasn't around 10 years ago. Because I may not be here. I really may not be here.
May not be here.
I may have taken it without knowing, or to be quite honestly, if I did know, I probably would have done it anyway. If I couldn't find anything else. And so it's funny because you feel like there's a brotherhood and there's just not. It's lonely. It's, hey, I'm your brother. Oh, you got cut? Okay. Whatever. Oh, you're using drugs? Whatever. It's just, it's a weird culture. And it's a macho culture where you got to handle yourself. Nobody's going to come to you and ask you if you're okay. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's the feeling I got when I was inside of it, Brock.
It makes a lot of sense, but here's the deal too, because this is a whole other side of this. Is some of the other players that testified, there is a photograph of the pitcher Matt Harvey, who has also played with Tyler, who would get these very strange nosebleeds in the middle of games. And after they went in and testified, they started realizing that Matt Harvey and Tyler would use cocaine and whatnot together too. So now they're thinking, hey, as he's out there pitching and getting these very strange nosebleeds, everyone thinks, oh, it's the humidity, it's the elevation. Well, it's probably not. It's probably breaking capillaries in the nose because of using it to snort, substances. And so it's kind of an interesting thing because Harvey even testified that he did use cocaine, that he did use the same things that Eric offered everybody. So it's a lot more widespread than we think. And so sometimes we can explain away some of these things by like, oh, that's a strange thing. And we can kind of like, not assume that it's something nefarious. But the sad part about it is, what if? No one asks the questions. And so I think that you're right, Max. I mean, it is heartbreaking to know how replaceable we really are, because this has been going on for 2 years. And when it first happened, I remember doing a little blurb on it with the team, Addict Athlete, and then, gone. And it wasn't until the last day of testimonies that I realized the trial was even going on. Yeah. So it's like we see these things, they last a moment, but we live in a world of breaking news, and so it's not a big deal anymore. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of people dying every day now. I mean, hundreds. 2 747 planes crashing every day. No one's doing anything. So again, it's one of these episodes where like it'll pass, but yet this Skaggs family are going to grow up without a father. The team's going to move forward, and they'll probably put a little plaque or something somewhere in the stadium, and that'll be that. And it'll be another story of sadness. Fentanyl killed Tom Petty. Fentanyl killed Prince. I mean, we're not waking up to it yet. How many people in high-profile society do we have to lose before we start scratching our heads compared to the thousands and thousands of let's say, mainstream people that are losing their battle because they're drug users, they're addicts? It drives me nuts. What do you think, Brock?
Well, just going back to this and knowing a little bit about the trial, and I just want to make something clear. And I don't want to forget the fact that this guy was a Major League Baseball player. He's not a chump. This guy's got some resolve. He's got some grit to him, and it makes me struggle a little bit when. I hope this doesn't come across wrong. I've been doing a lot of interviews with families who have lost their young kids to fentanyl overdose. That is not comparable to what we're talking about with this MLB player. Please understand that. These kids don't even really know what they're taking. He did. He even referred to these as blue boys. And when he was asking Kay to get them for him, he's like, hey, do you have any of those blue boys? So he knew the difference between fentanyl and an oxy. He knew it. He knew the difference. He knew the effect it had on him. He knew it was a greater high, except whatever it was, he was aware of it. And no offense to the family, because I know that they had a major loss, but the family was happy with the sentence. Now, as a spectator looking in, and as a recovering drug addict, if we're gonna talk like that, this I struggle with this a little bit because we don't get to hear much about Kay. We see the result that he died. Okay, we understand that, but he knew what he was taking. He knew it was a fentanyl pill. He had in the autopsy. Check this out. He had fentanyl, oxycodone, oxymorphone, and alcohol in his system. Guys, my man here was struggling.
Hardcore.
That right there tells me he's got a lot going on in his life that we're not addressing. There's some mental illness, some struggle going on to where, listen, he's made it. Max, you know what it felt like when you signed and you got paid? That feeling, man, was amazing. So this was more important than his career. And so I just hope we don't miss that. Like, we see this big, this guy could, 20 years to life. 20 years to life for this. And was he a contributor? Absolutely. But was he also a victim to this?
Yeah.
And I hate saying that. I hate saying, oh man. But
it's true.
But truthfully, when we're in our active addiction, are we making the greatest choice? Do we have that advisor that's saying, hey, bro, if you give this guy that and he dies, that's on you? We're not thinking like that. We're thinking about the camaraderie. We're thinking about, hey, I'm helping him be a better pitcher. I'm helping him get through his career and making the next contract. I mean, those are the thoughts that's happening. Did Kay purposely give him fentanyl pills to have him die? I don't think so.
Of course
I don't
not.
think that was the thing. So I just struggle. It's like this dichotomy on where do we intervene, man? Like, how do we? He knew what he was doing. I understand the family's struggling with this, but this guy had a lot going on in his life, and why was it not being addressed?
Yeah.
Well, and here's
But that's
a thought on this
overlooked.
with Eric. So he worked. What was his position with the team again? He was a
Communications director.
communications director, right? So, and I don't know if this guy was an athlete or not, or what his background is, but he's working for a Major League Baseball team, communications director. Now, one thing that we have to understand about most professional athletes is we are very charismatic. We are very convincing. We have big personalities, right? It's very easy for us to not manipulate, but like create relationships with people, right? People want to be around us. So you take a guy like Eric, I'm looking at it like he has his own problem, right? And somehow there's communication in there eventually to where these players find out that he can get pills. That's how I see this happening. I could be wrong, but this is how I see it happen. And Eric is like, finally agrees or whatever to start giving these dudes pills because to him, he's hanging with MLB guys. You know what I mean? And these guys are probably treating him really good just to get the pills from him. And so I don't want to say that he was manipulated because he wasn't, but I think he fed off that. I think Eric fed off the fact that he was hanging with the dudes. They were treating him really good because he was getting the stuff for them and, you know, probably making some money off of them, plus supplying himself. And they're just kind of created this thing where they were boys and they were hanging out. And I think that was the main motivation for Eric. Not necessarily a vindictive thing to try to get them drugs. It was, hey, I'm hanging with the big boys sort of a thing. Okay? So I can see that happening for sure. Okay? And these guys being really, really nice to Eric. Now, I'm not sure, Brock, though, if Tyler really knew what he was taking or not. Now, you said he had oxymorphone in his system as well. Well, for those who don't know, oxymorphone is a different type of pill. It's a different type of opiate. And you get it from a pill called Opana. Okay? And oxymorphone is actually more potent than oxycodone. It's like the next step up. It's nowhere close to fentanyl, but it is the next step up, and it just metabolizes in your system a little bit different. Okay? But I've done oxymorphone, I've done Opana, and it is a more intense high. Okay? So I don't know where he was getting that plus fentanyl, but when he says, are these the Blue Boys, and didn't you say, Blue, that, hey, are these legit? Isn't that what he asked? Are these legit? So I don't know if that question is saying, hey, is this legit Oxy Blues, you know, Oxy 30s? Or is this something else? Because maybe it looked a little bit different, or the printing was off, or the pill was more crummy. You know what I'm saying? Like, there could have been signs where he's like, wait a second, are these legit? And then whether Eric knew or not, maybe he did know they were fentanyl and just said, yeah, I think they're good, you know, just shrugging it off. Or maybe he didn't know. Maybe they were counterfeit. He didn't know. And he goes, yeah, I got it from the same guy. They should be legit. You see what I'm saying? We just don't know if Skaggs knew or not, whether or not he was taking fentanyl or not, Brock. But if he has oxymorphone, oxycontin, fentanyl, alcohol, cocaine, if he has all that stuff in his system, man, there is a bigger issue at stake here right now. Because at that point, he gives a flying damn what it is. He's going to put it into his system at that point. If you got that much inside of you, he is at a point where he doesn't care. He's like, will that get me high? Give it to me. Because I got all these pressures as a Major League Baseball player. I got money. I got pressures to play. I'm accountable to all these people. And it's nice to escape that. It's nice to get high and get away from it. But then, as we all know, it turns into a nasty habit. And now he's having to do it to function. He's having to take uppers, whether that's amphetamine or cocaine, to be able to stay awake and play. And he's probably enjoying the party life of the whole. So he's enwrapped in this whole culture and situation of playing Major League Baseball in front of all these crowds and the adrenaline and the excitement that comes with that. He's partying the night before, and he's feeding an addiction. So I want everybody to understand who might be judging him for this stuff, or judging even Eric, is that when you get wrapped in it that fast, it doesn't matter how much money you're making, or if you're a Major League Baseball player, or you're a CEO of a company, because you are blinded by the drug and by the addiction to where you don't take a step back and think clearly about what you really have and what's going on in your life. The only thing you can focus on is the immediate attention of getting high and partying and enjoying yourself because of whatever underlying issues you might have of anxiety, depression, pressure, stress, whatever. You're feeding yourself that to make you feel better. And then, last thing, you convince yourself. It's so funny. You actually convince yourself that you are better with the drugs than without the drugs. That you perform better, you feel better, you have more energy, and you put this blind over yourself when everybody else around you's like, man, what is going on? In your mind, you're living high, you're Superman, you're untouchable, and you're doing things great. And that's the shade that gets pulled in front of your eyes with this stuff. So those who are judging or saying, I can't believe this guy had it all, he's a Major League Baseball player, what the hell is he doing taking fentanyl? You don't understand addiction. You don't understand the stresses of it and how easy it is to fall down into that sinkhole and not be able to get out, Brock. So that's an important piece of it, understanding where he's coming from. And so whether you want to place judgment on it or not, that's up to you. But as somebody who's lived through it myself, I understand he was not making conscious, wise decisions for himself, and he had nobody around him to help him make those decisions. Where's his agent? Right? Where's his family? Where's his friends? Nobody to be found, because he is Tyler Skaggs, and nobody wants to get into his way and step into his path and confront him about it, because probably he'd get mad and tell him off, and everybody wants to be around the dude, right? Nobody wants to piss him off, and that's the exact same thing that I felt like happened to me when I went through my deal. So sorry I got a little fired up and went off on that, but people need to understand that.
Oh, I love it. Well, here's the deal, Max. You said something that I really want to touch base on that I don't think a lot of people understand, because you started using some code words, and I think it's important that people understand this. These fentanyl pills, these Oxycontin, there are counterfeit pills out there that look legit. And so you said a few things that I thought, I've never even thought about that too. But like, if Tyler's asking, are they real? Like you said, there's a few things that he probably recognized. You said pills are crumbly, maybe the labeling's off a little bit. Max, I don't think people realize that. Like, if you wouldn't mind, share a little bit about like what you noticed when that kind of stuff came through, because people think a pill is a pill, and if it's got a number on it, it has to come from somewhere safe. Yeah. But it doesn't. They can counterfeit this stuff to make it look identical, can't they?
Absolutely, they can.
That's the
there's so
scariest thing
many
in the
different
world.
types of it. Back when I was coming up, the milligrams in Oxycontin went all the way up to 120 milligrams. Right? And I think they were purple.
Yeah.
And then you had the greens, right? You had the greens, which were 80s, and those were the most popular ones. And then you had 60s, you have 40s, but then the 30s are the blues. And what happened is when finally the government or the FDA or whoever kind of cracked down on all these doctors prescribing 80 milligram, they're doing 3-month supplies of 80 milligram Oxycontin, right? So they're getting this for $10 a pill, and they're selling it for $60 a pill. You see what I mean? And so, but as they went away, the most popular ones are the blues. And the blues are Oxycontin 30 milligram pills. Now, there's 4 or 5 different companies who make these pills. So on the street, you're like, hey, I want the M's, or I want the K's, or I want the V's, right? There's different labels on all these drugs, and they look different. But as you get involved in it, you know exactly which one is which. And you can tell, you know the weight, you know the feel, the texture, you know the taste of it, right? Like, you get that involved in it. And so if I got a pill and it wasn't a VKM, or I noticed the labeling's off, or hey, the texture or the way this pill fills or crumbles is different, like you can tell something's off because you're that involved in it. So maybe he thought something was off, maybe he didn't. But I don't know. I've never seen a counterfeit fentanyl pill. I've never held one in my hand. Okay? I've seen pictures of them, and most of the pictures that I see, they look like the Oxycontin 30s with the M print on them. And the M's were the best ones, just so you know. They broke down the best. They were when they went in the water, the solution, it was the best. There wasn't as much gunk in them. So those are the more popular ones, and those are the ones I'm seeing, right? But if the color's off a little bit, or the texture, you should be able to know. But I have no idea how good they are at counterfeiting these pills, Blue. So I don't plan on ever having one in my hand, you know. But it can be detected for sure.
It can be detected for sure.
People got to know this.
Let me go on that if you don't mind, Max.
Go right ahead.
They're good at it. Just think, these guys have counterfeit, or they have real push presses. So these drug dealers, the pressing, the numbers all look the same.
Yeah.
That's what the problem is. I mean, these guys can push a pill out in your closet, because all you have to do is add the solution. Where the pill looks different is in the makeup. Right now in Arizona, most of the counterfeit pills are 60% fentanyl.
Oh my gosh.
60%? That's what the DEA has come out and say that in Arizona, that's the average that we're getting. So you have a pill that looks exactly, now, the edges may not be as sharp, the M may be a little bit, but dude, they're doing their job is to make the pill look exactly like it.
Yeah.
And so as good as the pharmaceutical companies are getting, they're trying to match that. So when they come out in the street, because if they don't look like it, guys will be like, hey, this is not. But here's the problem. Like Max said, most people right now, they're so addicted to fentanyl, they are searching those pills out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't want to go get a prescription of Oxycontin.
Yeah.
Why? I can go in the street and find a cheaper pill that gives me a way better high.
Yep.
Why would I do that?
Yep.
See?
And for me too, I remember times. Blue, real quick. I remember times when I called up a buddy and I'm like, hey, I need 10 blues, right? And I go to pick them up and I'm looking at them. I'm like, what the hell is that? It's got a K on it. Where are the M's? Like, you know what I mean? He's like, oh, it's the same stuff. It's the same stuff. And I'm like, all right. You know what I mean? Like, I just trusted him. I just said, oh, it's the same stuff. Okay, I'll use it. I don't care.
Man.
So that's the other thing to look at it too, Brock. Like, I didn't care. Does that get me high? Yes? Great. I'll take it.
Bloody hell. But that's the thing, guys. We have a really weird, mindset with pain. Because I'm a firm believer that most of this, I'm sure Tyler, because he had surgeries, I'm sure it's all started off with legitimate pain. But when you start taking them and get hooked to it, it covers all kinds of pain. It covers the pain of guilt. It covers the pain of shame. It covers the pain of physical, mental, emotional, everything. And so I think that we have to understand that if you peel back the layers and start watching Dope Sick, the movie, or read the book Dope Sick, and it goes into the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma. They did this on purpose. They knew that pain is something to be completely avoided. And we live in a world and society where we don't like pain of any kind. You go down to the local market, you go down to like the old Smith's or whatever, Kroger food aisle, you go down to the pharmacy aisle, maximum strength Tylenol, extra strength Bear, extreme Excedrin, because we want pain gone now. We don't want to wait. So if we can get regular Tylenol or maximum strength Tylenol, which one we grabbing? It's the same stuff, but our relationship with pain, it is a no-go. And so the pain of detox, the pain of withdrawal, not even a question. They'll do anything necessary to stay away from it. Mm-hmm. So it's also that mindset of like, we've got to toughen up a little bit, people. We have to be uncomfortable. I mean, Max, you had to go through it too. Stuff is uncomfortable. Brock, you did. You do a very eloquent job of telling a story about when you flushed him and then had the, oh hell, what did I just do moment. the stuff hurts, and then the residual stuff hurt. But now this pain that Tyler was in has now been extended to his whole family, to a community, to a team, to people that he's never even rubbed shoulders with. And so that echo of pain is going to keep on pushing through. What do you think, Brock? I mean, you've been in that situation. The hell of detox is worse than sometimes the use and the knowledge that you're doing something that could potentially be harmful.
Listen, man, nobody wants to go through the pain. That's why we use. And we're not talking so much the physical pain, man. We're talking about mental pain. We're talking about the psychological pain. I mean, that's really why we're using. And what's interesting, if we could break down this Tyler Skaggs death, I would love to know a little bit prior to this. I know that that Angels knew that he'd been struggling with it, and I think Eric K, that was his in, that they knew each other intimately in the game, and they probably bounced off each other. They probably were friends and using buddies, and they did this. This wasn't the first time. This is the first time someone died. But obviously, this was an ongoing. This was their crew. Like Max always says, man, we give these fake bro hugs and we hang out and we love each other. Hey, dude, I love you. I mean, that's what was going on here. They had created their own little dynamic of friends and using buddies, and it turned bad on them. This wasn't the first time. That's what we need to understand. Other players used with these guys. They just got lucky.
See?
They absolutely got lucky.
What do you think?
It could have happened to any of them, right? But it's just, I just want, and for people listening, it's kind of funny. Whenever I would get caught with it or whatever, I would never give up my buddy. You know what I mean? I would never tell anybody where I got it. Because there was this like weird underlying code of no snitching. You know what I mean? And for whatever reason, I barely know this guy, but I'd lie my face off for him. And part of it was I didn't want to piss him off and dry up a supply. You know what I mean? But I also didn't want anybody around me or loved ones to know who it was and go after them, or you know what I'm saying? Like I wanted to keep that to myself, and so you would lie and protect and do stuff, just to protect your supply. And that kind of underwritten code is the biggest bunch of BS, man. It just really is.
Agreed.
It's all BS. It's all fake. It's smoke and mirrors. It's all just part of your justification of your addiction. And you create it and you make it like everything's okay and you guys are going to protect each other and all that stuff. At the end of the day, though, when something like this happens, there's no more protecting going on. There's none of that. Now it's everybody trying to save their own butt, right? And
absolutely.
Go ahead,
Matt.
You're hilarious, dude. But because when I hear this, man, like there's a bond. There's bond in suffering and pain, right?
For sure.
There's a bond in that unity. Like we don't want to give these dudes up because we've suffered with these guys.
Yeah,
it's a real relationship. You're right.
It's a real relationship. But what's funny is working the criminal side, the criminal investigation. We had hardened criminals come in, and the first thing they say is, "I'm not giving my buddy up." Okay, well you're facing 20 years of life. Wait a minute, dude. It's funny. You just give them a little bit of time. You give them a little bit of incentive, and everybody rolls.
Yeah, it's funny.
See?
It's just so funny how it works, man.
Brock, I'm
laughing because it's true, but at the same time, it's sad. It really is sad. And you can be telling a bold-faced lie. Everybody around you knows you're lying, but you stick to it. And it's just looking back on it, I laugh at myself for some of the things that I did and some of the things that I said. But looking back on it, I'm like, that came from absolutely nothing. Like it was something that I made up in my head of this culture or this brotherly love or whatever you want to call it with these other druggies. And it was soaking in our own misery and making each other feel better. Okay, great. But the other thing, too, that everybody has to understand is once you start using this and you creating this, especially for somebody who's an athlete, you really start thinking that you're a better version of yourself. You really do. Like I said before, you think you're playing better, you're happier, You got, more motivation. You think all this stuff is going on when it's really not. But the problem is once you get that high and you feel like you're living up there, then when that high fades off, it's unbearable to be normal again. It's almost unbearable after living in a state, of high endorphin and getting high, right? Then you come back down and you're like, I can't live normal. Once I've had a taste of what it's like to be up here, I don't want to live down here anymore. And that's one of the biggest struggles when you're getting sober is getting used to living down normal. Instead of being up all the time. Everything slows down, and it is like gut-wrenching how hard it is to live without the euphoria of drugs. And that's when you, obviously get in deep and go from there. So some interesting perspective on this, but as I think of Tyler Skaggs, that's what I think of. I think he's living this culture. He's got these dudes around him. It feels like it's safe. He feels like it's coming from maybe a reliable source. Other guys are doing it. We're okay. We got our little posse. We're going to keep this a secret. No one's going to know what's going on. We're all laughing behind the scenes, having a good time until it catches up with you. And, unfortunately for him, it got to the point where Yodine died. And it's a sad thing. And I hope it's an eye-opening thing for a lot of people out there. An eye-opening thing that it doesn't matter where you're at or what you're doing, whether you don't have a job and you're living in your buddy's house in his basement, or if you're a professional athlete living a high life, a fast life, with money and material and playing the adrenaline of playing, it'll still get you. It just doesn't matter. But once you get a taste of that and you feel like you can't live without it, that is a dangerous road, and you do everything in your mind that you can to justify your behavior to make it seem like it's okay for yourself. And unfortunately for Tyler, he took it a little too far, or took that one pill that wasn't coded right, and it killed him. And that's how fast it can happen for people out there. So if you're in it, or if you know somebody who's in it, don't do what people did around Tyler. Don't do what they did. Reach out. Say something. Tell somebody else. Because as mad as that person might be when you confront them, they don't understand that you're trying to save their life. Okay? And it's worth at least trying or bringing the issue to light to potentially save this person instead of just not saying anything, letting it go. Next thing you know, your buddy or your friend or your loved one is found dead by themselves in a hotel room. I can't think of a more sad situation than having to die choking on your own vomit by yourself in a hotel room. That's a sad situation that I think could have been avoided if just one dang person in the organization, family member, a friend, would have actually cared about Tyler Skaggs, the person, and put aside Tyler Skaggs, the Major League Baseball player, and looked at him as a person. And I think there could have been some help there.
100%.
Kind of ticks me off.
Brock, wrapping it up. What do you think, brother? Yeah?
You know what's funny is I hope this has triggered a lot of emotions in Max. I can see it.
You can tell. You can feel it, yeah.
And what's interesting, I want to do an episode, I'm just going to throw this out there, of this alter ego that we create, this, I don't know what you want to, this superpower that we think we have when we're in active addiction.
That would be great.
Like we are almost living out of, I think that would be an awesome episode.
Coming up next week. I think we should do that.
Yeah.
I really do. Brock, I know we don't have too much time, and I don't think this question I should even ask because you won't be able to do it justice. But you and I, we work with a lot of people that have lost loved ones due to this issue. What are you noticing is universal when they talk about the heartache and the heart pain? Because that we're talking about all these things, but for a fact that his wife and his children, they're hurting. They're hurting now more than ever. They just had to be re-traumatized with this trial to have some understandings. This stuff will forever be out there as an asterisk by his name on every Major League Baseball stat, every Wikipedia page. What is the universal thing that you're hearing from people that are on the other end of this that are left behind?
Well, most of them are like, I didn't know it was that bad. Yeah. I thought he had it under control. I thought people knew. I thought the organization was helping him. And this is kind of what leads into what I want to talk about is this alter ego where in front of people we act like we got it figured out. and we're at the top of our game, but dude, we are falling apart inside. And I'm sure when you look at this on the surface, he probably looked like he had he's in the MLB. He was a number 1 draft pick.
Yeah.
People knew that this was going on.
Yep.
So that's where people, I think we're very good at deception.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then our
we
family's
dive
like,
into
well, damn, dude, I didn't even know. And so they feel violated. They feel like they're traumatized. Like, was it even the guy that I married? I didn't, And so those are difficult. I'm sure Kinsey thinks the same thing, Max, because
yeah.
Our wives didn't get to see us in active addiction too much. And so you kind of got to be the guy. And I'm sure Kinsey sometimes was like, oh my gosh, who is this guy?
Lucky.
I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine what she went through. And having to, Kinsey didn't know the extent of my addiction until I was a few years into it, right? And then getting towards the end, and there's a lot to go into it. I don't want to go into right now, but keeping on topic here, I'm thinking to myself, and I'm getting emotional thinking about it. What if that would have happened to me? Right?
For sure.
What if
I've been thinking that the whole time.
What if on a road trip I was found dead in my hotel room? And what would that have left my wife and kids to do? And the pain and suffering that they would have to go through. You don't think about those consequences when you're in the middle of it. And there's more hurt and damage done to those around you than you're actually doing to yourself. Drug addiction is a very selfish thing that affects and hurts people around you. And so I get emotional thinking about it. It very easily could have been me, and it's so unfortunate that it had to happen to Tyler. But I was good at it too. Everybody around me thought I was doing great. Hey, I've got, I'm on top of this. I got it. I actually, you know what I'm saying? Like, no one's going to confront me about it. And if they did, guess what I would do? I'd rip into them, And I'd make sure that they never came at me like that again. I'd make them feel stupid. And that's just kind of what you do. That's that alter ego that we're talking about that I'm actually excited to talk about next time. So be a good one to go over, especially after this episode, right?
I'm Max Hall. I'm an NFL player.
Yeah, I'm going to pound my chest and tell you to kick off.
Doing it, man.
Yeah, man, for sure. That's just how it works.
That's it. That's spot on. And it doesn't matter. I want you all listeners, although we've been kind of focusing on the fentanyl and the opiate issues here, this spiritual death, emotional death, relationship death, it's all one and the same. So it doesn't matter what you're struggling with, from pornography to gambling to substance use, man. This stuff has to get put in check, because you will have to leave loved ones in your wake, and that's not what we want to have happen for you. So I wanted you guys to continue to reach out, ask for help. The days of being silent are over. If you have a family member that you're noticing that there's some behaviors that are a little bit different, a little bit awkward, you call them out. If you don't know how to call them out, you let us know. We'll help give you some tips and some ideas on how to do so. Shoot, we'll even come and help you. I think that there's so many parts of this that we can go into deeper, and I really want you guys to tune in next week, because my mind's racing now. Brooke, I think that's a fantastic idea. It's a fantastic topic, because letting us be exposed to some of these listeners so they can kind of see what they're dealing with or how to help a loved one, it's what it's all about. And you can take it from us, the agents of recovery.